So here we are using sketches from your sketchbook to create and paint characters inside of Photoshop or Illustrator. What I recommend is that when you open up your sketch that you've taken on your phone or a scan, you open it in Photoshop, you want to enhance the image a little bit. I've just gone down in here, thrown a levels, black and white filter or black and white adjustment layers on there, and done this. If you're just wanting to work in Photoshop and make this look like a watercolor, I'm gonna make a blank layer. I'm gonna set this layer on multiply, and then you can go around and you can start selecting colors that you want to throw in with the paintbrush. So because it's on multiply, you can see that it lets your line work show through. That's the big tip. Or you can also adjust the opacity of that layer there, the multiply layers. And then you're getting a watercolor splashy look over top of the sketch that you brought in. I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to set that on multiply. And all I'm going to highlight here is that Photoshop and Procreate and other programs have texture brushes you can use. So you're not limited to the airbrush. You've got other brush packs you can download and play around with. And then you've got options to play around with texture brushes if you want. You can erase it, tweak it, smudge it, whatever you want. Don't forget, you can also go, there's a blur tool and the smudge tool. So you can actually go in and you can smudge this stuff around. So that's end of tip number one, inside of Photoshop, creating a watercolor effect. Okay, in Illustrator here, you can use your sketch as a template to trace over top of. And make sure that you file and place your images inside of here. So I'm going to place this character sketch that I've brightened up inside of Photoshop in here. And there it is. The big thing is I lower the opacity so it works like you've got your drawing on a window and a piece of paper in front of it, and lower the transparency of it. And I find that's easier to trace over top of. If you don't see your transparency window here, you can just go Window, Transparency, and raise and lower that transparency right there. Now inside of Illustrator, when I'm doing this tracing, I work inside of the layers area. So again, if you don't see the layers or this bar is not up, you can just go Window, click on Layers. The way that layers work in Illustrator is they almost look like folders or bins. They'll store paths and store things inside of them. The layers inside of Illustrator are slightly different than Photoshop in that regard. They function like groups or folders. And there's where you'll find the image that I brought in, that I placed in. I'm going to label this Sketch Trace Layer. And then I start making other layers over top of it. And then I can say Illustrator Drawing Layer. So you can turn this eyeball off and on easily. So I'm going to be in this layer here to start tracing over top of it. And then fast ways to trace is I go to my pen tool. When I'm tracing over an object, I pick no fill or no stroke and no fill. I just use the path and then I fill it in after. This is my big tip, is you can go around now and then you can start tracing parts of the head. I'm only going to trace the head for now because it would take me forever to trace everything. So my big tip is no fill, no stroke, trace it around, and then you can fill it in after, whatever color you want. So you have that filled in. And then inside of the drawing, you could call this the head layer. And you can turn that path off in there. Then I could zoom in a little further, and then I could start tracing the eye. You could even label these head base layer, eye. Turn that back on, maybe make that eye a different shade. This is where I might go into my gradients here. I'm just going to go into metals for now, and then click that. And then I could click on this head here. Try that. Those are the basis of how you get started.